MH370.
Flight 370.
The passenger jet disappeared over the South China Sea early this morning.
En route to China, there was no reports of any emergency.
The aircraft vanished from radar and lost contact with air traffic controllers without warning.
And no distress signal.
We're talking about the single biggest mystery in aviation history.
Large aircraft taking huge numbers of passengers around the world don't just disappear, and this one did.
If the pilots were in control of this airplane, what the heck were they up to?
Absolutely no sign of crash, no debris. Maybe the plane did not crash. They are trying to hide the truth.
Terrorist attack, freak accident.
Malfunction, fire on board.
There were so many conspiracy theories.
In my opinion, the evidence points toward the captain.
This is new information. It's scientific information, a compelling case.
It will only take one more search and we will find it.
If we don't find out what happened to the airplane, this mystery will stay alive for the rest of time.
My mom called me from the airport. We spoke often, we spoke every day. And her last words to me were, "I love you." And I'm really glad I told her I loved her too, because in our family, we rarely said those words to each other. They were words that we exchanged only through like greeting cards, like on birthdays or at Christmas. We spoke just before she boarded the flight, not knowing I would never see her again.
Chandrika was on her way to Mongolia to attend a conference. It was just another day, another trip, another goodbye, all with the expectation that in a matter of days she'll be back home and life will be just as it was.
Patrick was the person in charge of the cabin crew on MH370. March 7, 2014. MH370 was a late flight. After dinner, he got ready and we said our goodbyes. So see you later. That's it. And got into the taxi, and that was the last time we saw him.
Captain Zahari needed to be there, signed in 1 hour before. He gets his weather, talks to his co-pilot, meets his crew, the cabin crew, and walks to the aeroplane.
Delivery Malaysia 370, good morning.
Patrick had a lot of checks to do, on board, because he would basically be working in the first class and making sure that everything was ready and waiting for passengers to board.
Malaysia 370, request level.
370, we are ready, requesting flight level 350 to Beijing.
Kath and Bob decided to go on this massive holiday with their friends, and they were going through Vietnam and China and doing a boat cruise, etc. It was the trip of a lifetime. They were so excited. Actually, they nearly missed their flight because they had been having some drinks in the bar beforehand and didn't hear the calling.
The flight was fairly full, and the majority of passengers were Chinese, and they were going back to China. They'd mostly been on holiday. There may have been some business people. There were a few Australians on board, and there was a scattering of other nationalities too.
370, 3 to right of takeoff, nice. Captain Malaysia 370. Thank you.
MH370's takeoff was in the middle of the night, of course, so it was very dark, but the weather was good, the visibility is excellent, and the climb was pretty much normal.
Malaysia 370, selamat pagi. Identified climb flight level 180, cancel SID, turn right direct to Ikari.
When the aircraft took off, it was heading to Beijing on a 5.5-hour flight. But its initial aiming point was what's known as a waypoint, called Igari, to designate the division of airspace between Malaysia and Vietnam.
Okay, level 180, direct Igari, Malaysian 370.
The aircraft was approaching Igari, and Kuala Lumpur came up and said, "You're clear to call Ho Chi Minh Control in Vietnam."
Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9, good night. Good night, Malaysian 370.
Listening to his last message, talking to air control, good night 370, it is very heartbreaking because it's the last thing anyone has heard of anyone in the aircraft.
The blip representing the airplane and all of the data disappeared from the screen. Suddenly there's nothing there. MH370 and the pilots should be talking to Ho Chi Minh City, and you would have thought that they'd get onto the telephone and say, "Have you got him? Can you see him?" But that didn't happen for quite some time.
My operations control center called me about 1 hour after we lost contact with the aircraft. So I opened my iPad and looked at our flight following system, and I saw 4 other flights, but not MH370. That flight was missing. That really made my...
At that point I asked, so what else is going on now? And I was told that they were continuously making calls not only to the aircraft itself to try and establish contact, but also contacting air traffic control, our other aircraft that were in the sky at that time, and also neighboring airlines that also had aircraft operating, for them to make contact with our missing aircraft. The severity of the situation is increasing all the time because of the failure to communicate with the aircraft, and our search and rescue is being activated.
I was asleep. I had my first message at about 5:30 in the morning. The first question that my friend asked me is, "Are you alive?" That was the first thing. And then it was a flurry of messages after that. Beep, beep, it kept on going on, so I stopped sleeping. I said, "What are you talking about?" "Gina, a plane is missing. Our plane is missing." I couldn't move. I felt paralyzed. Because it could have been me or my other friends.
I was a student in the UK at the time, had just come home, and I received a call from my dad, and he told me something happened to the plane your mother was on. When I found out about the flight, I just grabbed my passport and I carried my handbag and I just walked out the house.
I remember arriving in Beijing. Chinese lady were waiting for me, saying, "Mr. Watrolo plane, can you please follow me?" And suddenly we enter into a room, and in this room there was the French consulate. He said, Guillain, the plane of your family just crashed down into the sea.
Good morning. An international search and rescue operation is underway after a passenger jet disappeared over the South China Sea early this morning. The Malaysian Airlines plane from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing had 227 passengers and 12 crew on board when it suddenly vanished from air traffic control screens.
We were invited to participate in the investigation. At that time, the assumption was that the airplane would be found soon. It's kind of difficult to organize an accident investigation when you don't even know what happened yet. You don't even know where the airplane is. You don't have witnesses. My initial thoughts, once the radar or radio communication was lost with the airplane, there could be something that explained that from a mechanical perspective.
When you get an aircraft that disappears in the way that this one did, initially, all you know is it disappeared off radar. You go looking for it, you don't find it. You think, what? Something went wrong. It must have been drastic.
There was a lot of theories because a lot of people were trying to find what happened. There was a theory that there was an explosion and suddenly there was a fire on the plane.
There was a lot of rumors maybe saying that the plane had landed somewhere in China or that the plane had sort of ended its flight somewhere off the coast of Malaysia. And there were just a lot of very disturbing images. Well, I cannot describe how horrible that felt.
We took sample of the oil from the sea, and after doing analysis, it was not from the aircraft.
There were a lot of false alarms about debris being seen, and this news, all this up and down, was very difficult to deal with. For me, it was a mixed bag of emotions because at some point it gave me some hope that maybe the plane had been hijacked. And if the plane had been hijacked, maybe there was some hope for like ransom and maybe seeing my mom again.
Tonight, the sea search area has been widened, but nothing's been found. And authorities are refusing to rule out any possibilities, including terrorism.
It was revealed that two Iranians who boarded the flight with fake passports. So investigators were looking at possibilities of hijack, terrorism.
When I first heard about the two Iranians with the stolen passport, I was thinking to myself, how can they let this happen? Why is security so lax? And, could this be the reason why the plane is missing?
The police also provided us with a picture of these two Iranian guys. And in the picture they provided, both of them, the leg was mismatched to the top. So we got altered photograph, and this angered the people out there.
它下半身都是同样的，都是拼接的，而且拼接的一样。这种我叫它叫漏洞也好，管它叫马脚也好，就是让我们就变得特别不信任。
All the conspiracies and rumors started about how they could have potentially hijacked the plane. But when we found out that they were just students who were trying to get back to their families, it became quite obvious to us that they didn't fit the profile of terrorists or anything like that.
We have been checking his background. We believe that he is not likely to be a member of any terrorist group. And we believe that he is trying to migrate to Germany.
Malaysian officials have today admitted there is still no sign of the airliner, missing now for almost 5 days.
the last contact it had with air traffic controllers gave no indication of any trouble. Yesterday, the focus of the search was, however, extended from the South China Sea to the Strait of Malacca, and today it's been expanded again to the Andaman Sea, north of the Malacca Strait.
My first reaction is, why did we search in an area if we knew the plane was not there, and because the plane was on the other side? So this is why, immediately for me, there is a lie. They are trying to hide the truth, and they are trying to give us a different story.
Good night, Malaysia 370.
Zahari has said goodnight to Kuala Lumpur Control. The aircraft just got to Igari, and then all of a sudden, the civilian air traffic controllers cannot see him any longer. At that point, we now know, didn't know at the time, but we now know that this invisible aircraft turned fairly sharply left. This turn was not insignificant. This turn was through very nearly 180 degrees.
We had no clue that the aircraft made a U-turn. And this U-turn news actually came from the primary radar, which is controlled by the Ministry of Defense.
For whatever reason, the airplane turns back and go back to its departure point. That's not unusual, but what is unusual is that the aircraft continued going beyond that point. There's been a number of accidents over the years where an airplane has become unresponsive to malfunction on the aircraft.
There was a possible air turn back, but there was no distress signal issued.
因为它的在丽都的时候的信息就是这飞机一会儿入海了，一会儿降落了，一会儿折返了，所以那种折磨是一次一次的折磨。
The Malaysian government has accepted that the search for the missing passenger plane is back to square one, but this evening a second American newspaper has reported that the plane flew on for 4 hours after it lost radio contact.
On the Sunday, after the plane was lost, one of our engineers thought, I wonder if it stayed on the network, and began looking at the network information over Sunday, Monday, and then came to the conclusion, hey, it did stay on the network, and it stayed on the network for a number of hours.
They came back to us on the third day to say that this is something that we have to show you. And when I looked at it, I was shocked because by the end of the graph, at 8:11 in the morning, I still remember the time, 8:11 in the morning, there was a beep to say that the aircraft communicated with the satellite. I said, my God, what does it mean?
The satellite data that was being used for helping to reconstruct the flight was something that in my time as an investigator, in my experience, and I think for most others, had not been used for tracking airplanes. That was something new for me. And I didn't know how reliable that was going to be as an investigative tool.
It was somewhat speculative. Doesn't mean that the mathematics they were using to detect the aircraft were wrong. So we talked to the family members.
It was all still very blurry to me. We just kept asking us, so where is it? Where do you think the plane is?
What we said to them is that we've got some new insights of where the aircraft is located, but it won't finalize its location in detail. It just gives us likelihood that the aircraft was operating on one or two of these flight corridors. There was both a northern flight corridor and a southern flight corridor where the aircraft could potentially be.
So I said, okay, then why don't you just go there and look for it?
Ladies and gentlemen, the Prime Minister of Malaysia.
I wish to be very clear. We are still investigating all possibilities as to what caused MH370 to deviate from its original flight path. These movements are consistent with deliberate action by someone on the plane.
Following the announcement by the Prime Minister that the aircraft had to be under pilot control, or under someone's control, I was somewhat surprised.
Thank you.
I had no information that there was anything that would lead anyone to that conclusion, except for the flight path of the aircraft. There was sort of no supporting backup information of issues with the family or issues with the pilot and co-pilot.
Malaysian police have spent the weekend investigating members of the crew. The pilot's sophisticated flight simulator has also been removed from his house.
The investigators went to his home and found his home setup for a flight simulator. They looked at the various things that he'd been doing with that simulator. There were a number of scenarios, one of which was involving a flight down into the southern Indian Ocean. So it's easy to say, well, if he had a flight simulation that went down to the southern Indian Ocean and the plane has now landed in the southern Indian Ocean, there was obviously, the two are obviously related.
That was the talk of the town, especially on the media. He is a strong supporter to Anwar Ibrahim. And a day before that, Anwar Ibrahim was basically convicted. And that created the assumptions that the pilot takes certain actions regarding to this.
And that was then used as a potential theory that the captain was somehow involved in the disappearance of the flight for political reasons. I could not connect the dots of why his political alignment could affect his psychological well-being, why he might have had nefarious reasons to take the flight off its course and fly it way off course. It just, none of that ever made any sense to me.
We know it wasn't in the north because nobody saw it on radar, and there's lots of land up there and they would have seen it on radar if it'd gone. Then we know it wasn't west for the same reason. It didn't cross India. We know all the things it didn't do, so we know it must have gone south, in the middle of the Indian Ocean.
It is therefore with deep sadness and regret that I must inform you that according to this new data, flight MH370 ended in the southern Indian Ocean.
For the people who lost relatives, not knowing where they are and not knowing how they died, but knowing that they did die, that's pretty terrible.
And I just cried because, you know, if it went into the Indian Ocean, that's it. Who can survive that ocean? It's rough and it's deep. And so I realized that I would not see Patrick anymore.
There was a strange SMS sent to all the family on 24th of March from Malaysia Airlines saying, okay, we know what happened now. We know that the plane crashed into the South Indian Ocean. and all the passengers died at that time. So we're deeply sorry.
Whoever announces the loss of a plane and the likely loss of all passengers through a text message to the family members, I thought that was a stroke of stupidity.
一定有什么东西被掩盖了，里边是有阴谋的。
It seemed very premature that they had made this announcement because there was absolutely no information or no debris, no physical evidence of any sort to support this theory. So it was just mind-boggling, and for me personally, and I believe most of the passengers, we didn't accept that the plane had ended its journey or crashed into the ocean.
My boss had rang me and said, we need someone to lead the search, and are you interested? Would you like to do it? And of course my answer was a very positive yes, because by that stage I was utterly committed to finding some answers for the next of kin and indeed bring those folks home if I possibly could.
We could find the debris field any day, but the likelihood, given the size of the area, is we're in for the long haul. It will take many months.
We were following it as closely as we could, basically just to see whether they had found anything of interest, because that was our one modicum of hope of finding something or finding out what happened.
There was underwater volcanoes extinct. The Gilving fracture zone ran through the search area further south, which was, in all respects, the Grand Canyon in the search area. Really challenging and hard places to look.
There was no debris field and there was no wreckage found on the surface that could be identified as coming from the aircraft. So without any clue as to where the aircraft impacted the ocean, it was going to be an extremely difficult job.
Where an airplane was not found right away, what typically was found right away or very quickly was debris. In fact, I can't think of a time where we had an accident where that didn't take place. That was unusual in this particular case.
In 1998, a Swiss Air aircraft crashed off the coast of Nova Scotia, and we had to do a very, very extensive investigation. That aircraft split apart into somewhere near 2 million pieces. A lot of it became floating debris and floated to the shorelines.
An extensive search was done in the area, and there was nothing that was seen in the way of flotsam. So I found it, I won't say unlikely, it's totally unacceptable to accept the fact the aircraft crashed at a high speed and it didn't leave an enormous amount of debris around.
Too much time had passed. It was nearly 2 weeks before the Australian ships even set out to look for this wreckage. And that's a long, long time to try and find an airplane in a body of water that big when you are not sure where in the body of water it entered. Debris can disappear, debris can sink.
The Australian leaders of the search had the understanding that the debris would end up in Indonesia, more particularly in Sumatra. This was a very big surprise to us because it is not possible for debris to end up in Indonesia because between the South Indian Ocean and Sumatra, you basically have a very strong current. So then we started running our computer simulations to give some indication of what may have happened. We showed that the debris would move north from that origins in the southern Indian Ocean, and then it would basically get moved to the west.
Johnny Begg is the man of the moment on the tiny Indian Ocean island of Reunion. It was he that found the wing section, thought to belong to MH370, washed up on the beach as he was searching for a stone to grind chilies.
C'est là que j'ai vu le débris d'avion à partir de là. Et après, j'ai tout de suite compris que c'est un débris d'avion par l'arrondi. C'est un morceau d'aile. Mais quel côté, je ne sais pas, mais parce qu'il y a des vis, il y a tout. J'ai tout de suite descendu, j'ai regardé.
I remember watching the news that it was confirmed to be a part of a Boeing 777. And I remember sort of the beginnings of a panic attack or something, because this would have been the first time that a piece of the plane had been found, and that would mean that the plane had crashed.
That was the second death of my family, because so far I had no proof of a crash. Okay? So far we were still expecting that they could be alive, okay, somewhere. But suddenly someone is telling me, yes, we have a proof of a crash. So proof of a crash means yes, but it's over, okay?
If this was from MH370, we knew it could tell us potentially something about how the aircraft came down, and, you know, most importantly, where it came down. So we were very excited.
When the flaperon was found, there was a lot of interest in what we were doing, because we were the first people to actually say this is where a debris would end up in.
I went to meet Professor Cherry when I heard that the flaperon was found. I'm a lawyer, but I don't practice law now. Mainly, I travel the world and try to solve mysteries. Currently, I'm trying to solve the mystery of Malaysia 370. I asked Professor Cherry where I should go to search.
So I've said, look, our debris paths will come, will go to the north and south, and then most of it will actually end up along the northeast coast of Madagascar. And Blaine said, but Cherry, I have been to Madagascar. Tell me another country to go to. So I said, well, the next one is Mozambique.
When I got there, I asked local people, fishermen, boatmen, where does debris from the open ocean wash ashore? Well, there's a sandbank outside the reef that's exposed to the open Indian Ocean. We landed at the sandbank, and all I saw was loads and loads of plastic. So I was looking at one thing, and suddenly the boatman calls my name. Is this Malaysia 370? I went to Mozambique, so this is a good place to look for plane debris. And here, this gray triangle has no step written on it. I'm not an aircraft engineer, so I had no experience with what aircraft debris looked like. But I knew no step because I've seen it written on the wings, so I thought it was from the wing. Australia and Malaysia did their investigation. They analyzed the paint, they analyzed the stencil of no step where it was written. They said no step was almost certainly from Malaysia 370.
The awareness of the fact that debris was washing up was enhanced by the publicity surrounding Blaine Gibson.
The local people in Mozambique had never heard that any debris from a plane would be there. Well, that to me is inexcusable, because the authorities should have put all of those countries and those fishermen and those Coast Guards on notice to be on the lookout for debris. After I found no step, I was definitely encouraged to search on.
We just found this piece of debris. We have not picked it up yet.
And we have found these 3 pieces of debris here.
I was questioning it a little bit. There were so many conspiracy theories that were popping up alongside this information. The plane was a Russian spy, that someone had planted the debris and he was just pretending to find it. So I just reached out to him. Here was this civilian who was just walking along the beach, and he stumbles upon debris when there are all these sophisticated searches going on and recovering nothing.
Almost 3 years after one of the world's most baffling aviation tragedies, the governments of Australia, China and Malaysia have suspended the search for MH370.
We should not be willing to sit and accept that a Boeing 777 just vanished, that when the search for a missing aircraft becomes too difficult, we just give up, we just throw the towel in. That shouldn't be the case. We ourselves, using Professor Chari's drift modeling, went on our own to try and raise awareness about finding debris on the coastline of Africa.
And it was really to be that people find debris by chance. We want people to know what to be on the lookout for, how to preserve debris if they find it. I think that's important.
We were at the next cove, and when we came back, we found this washed ashore.
The pieces that were confirmed 370 really, there was like a personal bond with that debris. Because that was the plane that Patrick was on. And I have actually pieces from the aircraft, the honeycomb, that I have. Patrick is my husband. He was on that plane, so whatever they find from that plane is part of him as well.
You have so many people calling you every day. Thousands of people who have sent me emails or trying to call me, saying I can help you. But you realize very quickly that some of them are here to make sure you will not find the truth.
I was worried about the possibility that someone who was trying to stop Malaysia 370 from being found might take violent action against me. I was worried about that, but I didn't know who. I didn't know why. I started to get death threats from anonymous people. Things like no plane, no blame, give up my search. One made a call to a friend of mine and said I would not leave Madagascar alive. Being followed, and I was being photographed. And yes, it's very disturbing and it's intimidating.
When people feel that there's voids in the investigation or answers that they felt was not entertained or questioned, they felt that we're not entertained. We will want to know if there's something else more to this. That meets the eye, and that's understandable.
他们不说的事情没有还我这些人的生命的事实，你知道吧？所以这些人都抗议。And what do you want from them?
他在这说了好多，你确定不？We want they give us the truth.
In the various stories that we heard regarding MH370 and the various conspiracy theories we uncovered, probably the most troubling one was that we were not telling people where the aircraft resided, where did it end up. And we could never overcome that challenge because we simply did not know where the aircraft had ended.
Some people in this world, they know exactly what happened. Okay? And it's not only one person. I mean, it's a big story, it's a dirty story, and this involves, I would say, many different countries. And I strongly believe the plane was shut down. There was something or someone or something and someone in the plane that should not arrive in Beijing, and you have to shut down the plane.
Alternative theories to what the officials believe happened abound. But there's a lot that essentially should be looked at that isn't. And conspiracy theories, alternative theories allow that to happen. It should be looked at as part of the what could have happened.
When we looked at the different pieces of wreckage, we said, you know, there's evidence here. And in my opinion, the evidence points toward the captain.
The aircraft did a very slow, relaxed turn to the south of Penang. It's significant that he was born and brought up at school in Penang. I would say that was the last farewell.
In regard to the captain, it's hard to ignore that he had some home simulator data that was similar to the one undertaken by MH370. He was also the last one to speak on the radio to air traffic control.
My theory about what happened on Malaysia 370, it's the only thing that explains it.
We had covered around 112,000 kilometers squared, which was massive. As far as this being under a deadline, you pushed the envelope a little bit.
In aviation history failed because they searched in the wrong area.
When the final safety report was released, we thought we would finally find out what happened to MH370. What was happening to the engine, what was happening in the cockpit, and why did all this happen? I wish that these questions would be answered.